Happy Tuesday, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join our webcast. My name is Mateo Castillo. I'm the marketing manager here at Auritas, and I'll be your host for today's webinar, The Keys to Data Strategy in 2021. Now everyone should be able to see the screen, and although viewers are muted, we highly encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation via the chat box. At the end of this presentation, our speakers will try to answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A portion of our webinar. Now allow me to briefly introduce our presenters. Today with us is Deepak Sood, CEO and CTO of Auritas. Deepak has been a data management expert for 22 years now. Deepak has presented at various SAP events and frequently lends his expertise to enterprise business leaders. Next to him is Feroze Arif, our Senior Director of Product Development and Operations. Feroze has over 25 years of experience spanning data analytics, SAP Master Data Management, data quality and governance, and SAP data migration. Our third presenter is our Senior Director of Professional Services, David Atkinson. David has over 20 years of experience as a global software and services professional supporting both IT, businesses, and SAP, ERP, data migration, data governance, EIM, ILM, and DCM. And finally, me, your host, Mateo Castillo, the marketing manager here at Auritas. I began my career within the technology and software space. My experience within the B2B marketing space includes marketing AI automation solutions, as well as court and land record management software. We have a lot of new individuals joining us today. So now, if you're not familiar with who Auritas is, we were founded in 2003 and have been in the business for about 17 years. We're headquartered right outside of Orlando, Florida, and we're well known within the SAP ecosystem as the data and content management experts. We are thought leaders in the industry and specialize in delivering complex EIM, ECM, ILM, and SAP HANA optimization solutions. We're known for leveraging our decades of SAP and OpenText expertise to maximize the use of native functionality, allowing our customers to do more with less. We stress the phrase process before technology, and that's largely in part due to the Auritas vision, which is to help you implement an overall data management strategy to meet your digital transformation goals. On this next slide here, we have a diagram of the intelligent enterprise. Many of you today may already be familiar with this slide and what it represents, but as a brief overview, you can see here the intelligent enterprise is made up of three critical components: the application layer, the analytics layer, and the data management layer. And that's where Auritas fits in. At the bottom of the screen here in red, you can see how Auritas fits perfectly within the data management layer. Most of our solutions leverage EIM, ILM, and DCM technologies. At Auritas, our goal is to make you lean, clean, and compliant. So from what you can see here, Auritas is the one-stop shop for all your data management needs. No other vendor in the market does what we do at this scale and in such a holistic view. Now, to walk you through our agenda for today. To start, we will discuss what we call the data journey, followed by the core components for data strategy. Next, our own approach to said data strategy, followed by the implementation and methodology that we offer. Lastly will be our Q&A portion of the webinar, where we will be taking questions dropped in from the chat box. Now, to pass it off to David Atkinson, who will walk you through the data journey.
Thank you, Mateo. And good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure. I've been around this space, especially with the SAP world, for the last 20 plus years. So want to kind of talk about what Auritas kind of seen over the last few years and how we've honed our expertise to help you map out your data journey, create your roadmap, and I'm going to get into a little bit about this, and the holistic view around cross-project implementation plans. So fundamentally, let me just say this to begin with. When you talk about a data transformation project and you talk about the data journey and data management, what we've learned over the years, and I think everybody on the phone has seen this or is embarking on this, is that the fundamental that there's a single project. You're either doing an S4 migration, you're doing a merger or acquisition, you're doing a legacy decommissioning. And what that really means is there's a whole set of projects that are embedded within that overall vision. So why do I say there's a whole bunch of projects embedded? Because within your organization, there's different parts of your company which are responsible for those particular pieces, whether it be the migration, the quality, or the archiving. And we've bumped into this on several occasions. What does that mean? You have a single project that expands into multiple projects. And the reason we're going there is because Auritas sees multiple RFPs for a single initiative. So how can we help you on that data management journey? So what it really means is there's 4 or 5 main components of any data management journey. whether you're talking about an S4 migration, whether you're talking about a merger and acquisition, or whether you're talking about legacy decommissioning. You can go to the next slide there. Okay, how do you get there? We talk about S4 migration. What are the tasks needed for a successful, cost-effective migration? Which objects and modules come first? What is the archiving strategy to reduce database size? Very important, especially with S4 and SAP. And we come across this all the time. Next, mergers and acquisition. Is it SAP to SAP? Some of this is reusable. Although a lot of your vendors will claim 60% to 40%. We go 40 to 60%. We've done a few. Is it legacy to SAP? And that's a fundamental migration. No different than your S4 initiative, where you have to turn around and use the right tools and have that right strategy. And DVM, what to retain and where? Deepak's going to explain some of the strategy around data volume management and archiving. Very important part of your strategy. And we're going to talk about the chronology of how you do things successfully. You make things easier, you make them efficient, and you make them cost effective. And then when we talk about legacy decommissioning in some perspective, what are you going to keep and what is the strategy to move some of that data maybe to BW? Next. There we go, system decommissioning. What systems are identified in scope? What tools to use for conversion? Data services is a great tool to turn around and move data from point A to point B. And really importantly, it's what is the data quality strategy? Because you're going to hear a common theme throughout this around the chronology of your data journey around archiving, quality, migration, and governance. And it's really important because if you get this right, it can make it really effective. It can make the business adopt it in a great fashion, and you can all be successful. And what data is being retained and where? Are you going to keep some of those legacy systems for historical, or are you going to move those and archive those off from a reporting standpoint? Thank you. Next. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand this off to Deepak. I think all you guys need to understand is what I just laid out is a data management strategy for how you do this data journey. So with this, I'll hand it off to you, Deepak, so you can walk through the transformation stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar series for data strategy. Very excited for you to be out here. This is a fishtail slide that talks about the things required for doing or implementing an S4 implementation in your environment. Now, as David has talked about, that data strategy does not necessarily require itself to just talk about migration towards S4. There could be a lot of different requirements or initiatives, including divestiture, mergers and acquisitions, system decommissioning comes, but you will also find with all this S4 transformation coming along, a good number of projects are in this space. So I thought I'll start with this to share how this whole process all comes together. Now on the screen here, you're looking at a couple of pieces, and I'm going to point using a pointer. I'm going to point a couple of things out there. Now, if you look at the lower side of the screen, there is data quality. There is data quality and stewardship listed, which incorporates data governance, data migration, the tools of data services, data quality using information steward and some third-party information steward accelerators from Solex solutions like a Synity solution all put together. But then I'm going to take your attention towards the information lifecycle management. I'm going to cover this piece with you, in detail, and you will find that information lifecycle management is the only area that has been listed twice in this fishtail slide. And it is for a reason. It is by design. It is very critical and important for the customers to address this. And I'm going to cover this piece, why exactly it is being listed from a data volume and data tiering strategy perspective. Nearlining is a similar process that you do onto a OLAP-based systems like your BW systems or any kind of analytical platform, BPC and all that you're looking at. Content management is the next area that you're looking at. This is where you want to build a holistic approach about handling data, and documents together. And this is where some other Solex solutions also comes into play, like an open text solution, all put together. And then, we talk about the change management strategy using Llama and a couple of other active solutions. But again, let's look at our big approach. What should you be looking at from the core components of data strategy? We are looking at simplified way of volume. And what we try to do out here is also to show you, is there a product from SAP? Is there a solution from SAP that can address that? By no means SAP is, or Auritas is recommending, hey, you should buy these products and all. We are a organization who, from our foundational process perspective, decided that we do not resell products. We are primarily looking into providing the value of your current investment, software investment. So we are not advocating any purchase of the software, but at the same time, we would like to educate you what are the tools and the functions that are available to you for implementing these solutions. So for volume, SAP has a product called Information Lifecycle Management. And the same way, if you look at data quality, whether it is the master data quality, and we will also wanted to touch, transactional data quality, because that's where the dollars and cents are. But because of the brevity of the time for this webinar and the content that we are covering, we figured that it'll be version 2 of our webinar, that where we'll share the details about the transactional data quality also. We'll talk about migration, of course, both for master data and transactional data. Governance, how do you manage and maintain your data in a good state? That's something that is going to be critical. And again, in the later part of this presentation, we'll provide you more details on that. And same thing for compliance, privacy. For those of you who have gone through the ringer with GDPR, California Data Protection Act, Washington Data Protection Act, and now there are about 11 states which are in different state of putting data privacy and compliance requirements that you have to abide by. And here is a Solex solution for that. And last but not the least, how do you link all of those things end to end with a content management solution like an open text? So if I try to backtrack the process and I say that, look, SAP suggests that, no matter what release of SAP, if you're not on S/4HANA, you have to have that journey started, because SAP says January 2027 is the time when, all the other releases of SAP will be out of support, or they will not be supported by SAP, and you have to implement, or you have to be on the S4 platform. If I backtrack my time based on how large your organization is, whether it is implementing the solution and stabilizing it, whether it is procuring the hardware, whether it is securing the funding, or looking at all the different sizing of migrations and quality and all, you would find yourself that analyzing and addressing your data falls right in the current and coming year, calendar year. So what's happening is that if you want to have the right sizing of your S4 platform, you have to know what would be your volume that you need for doing that. For optimizing and bringing the productivity and the response time, you also have to know what would be the right data quality, what kind of material, what kind of customers and finance and financial details you want to keep in the system. All that analysis is going to be required to be done now if you want to have a successful deployment of the S/4HANA solution all put together. So let's start piecing and slicing this area of data strategy, the different areas that I had listed real quick in the screen. First, the volume. As you can see, many of the organizations, no matter how small or how large, that we have consulted with, and over the years, we have now consulted with over 300 organizations, we find that their data is primarily sitting in the database, no matter how old the data is. It is just being stored in the database because the typical answer is, oh, we do not know what we don't know. We do not know when we will need that information, so we'll rather hold this information forever. Well, in prior times, the hardware was getting cheaper by the day, the storage was not that expensive, and customers were able to address that requirement, by saying, okay, well, let's continue with the status quo. Now the paradigm is shifting. The things are changing. The new hardware, including the licenses, are expensive. To keep a system in a highly responsive state, you have a very responsive platform like HANA. And that HANA platform also requires constant management and maintenance, so much so that the founder of SAP, Dr. Plattner, says, you better do a proper data tiering strategy to keep the system in a healthy state or get the maximum out of your system. This is what they recommend, that you want to keep your data for a period of time in the system. You have your database out there, and you do not want to keep all your data all the way across out here in the database. Maybe after a year or 2 fiscal years, you want to archive that information. Now, archive will compress your information by up to 80%. Now you can hold this information for an extended period of time based on your retention policies, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, depending upon the country you are doing your business in. But the good part is, the way SAP has designed this whole process, your users have seamless access to all this information. It is not that that information is gone from them. They go to the same transaction code, even the same reports, and they can get data blended both from the database as well as the archive, and that makes the whole process quite seamless for them. And this is how the product of SAP ILM comes into play. So, the initial version, we used to talk about doing data archiving. And then it transitioned into ILM, where you say, hey, I have to purge my data, whether it is privacy requirement, compliance requirement, where I have to say that my retention policy mandates me to get rid of this information after 7 years or 10 years. And this system is able to do that. Also, you will find that you are able to use the same software for doing system decommissioning, both for SAP as well as for the non-SAP system. Now, you will also ask me the fact that, this is all very valuable. And can you show me what kind of benefits can a customer realize while doing this exercise in the system? I wanted to show you this example graph of a sample company where we implemented the data volume management functionality. The blue piece and the number that you're seeing on the screen is the number they would have been had they not done archiving. Imagine how much would you have to pay for a 50 terabyte system. And if you have to size and if you have to fund that system, even if it is on-premise or cloud, firstly, a really, really large system, even after the compression you get from S4 HANA. Secondly, this is a huge investment just in the infrastructure itself. Now, the yellow line that you're looking at reduces your entire investment by a factor of 2. And this is by very conservative estimates. This is where we are saying that we are archiving not very aggressively. We are just managing your data and keeping it under control. Imagine the savings you have. These archiving projects many times have an ROI of less than 5 months. And if you're a customer who has a solution like this size, your ROI could be even less than that. So these are all the things that come together when you're looking at a data volume strategy. I'm going to shift a little bit now to say that, how does it all link together for documents? In other words, if you are building your data strategy, you should be addressing your data and documents at the same time. So I addressed my data volume piece, and I can store that, content onto a storage solution. But what about the supporting information that comes along with that? You could have a vendor invoice, you could have a sales order, you could have a dunning, you could have a purchase order document that many times you will find from a productivity perspective, it is lost. It is there, but you have to log on to multiple applications to see that information. And many times you will find that as you're starting your business processes, the way the functionality or the features are located, they could be located in different applications. What happens with that? Well, you are struggling with the fact that this information could be there, but you could have multiple copies of that information. For instance, in this particular screen, you might have received the invoice as an email. You store it in your, in your Windows drive. You might have stored it, made a copy of it and stored it into SharePoint. And eventually you store it into the SAP system. Well, what is the version of truth? What is the real document if you have to do any kind of compliance? That becomes a big quagmire for many companies. With a content management solution, a holistic solution like an open text solution, you could have a single source of truth. Meaning, if you get an invoice into your email, the same document from your email can be stored onto your storage solution, but then all you're doing is linking that document across different applications. And if you're doing any updates, notes, annotations, and all, you're referring to the same document, one source of truth, one throat to choke, and that way you have all of that information available to you in a holistic manner. Now, this will add to your big picture of data privacy. How does it all come together? See, many times with these data privacy requirements all coming, all put together out here, you are finding that customers are saying, tell me where my information is. But, organizations, small or large, are using in excess of 200 applications at any particular point of time. So how do you determine where are you keeping privacy details for the customers, whether it is in the data format, whether it is in the document format? Here is an example where you're looking at a screen of this gentleman named Gordon Stewart. You might have his first name and last name, maybe his email address. Gordon logged on to your website, maybe your social media site and all. You are collecting information from there. You might also have the information of Gordon Stewart coming from your weblog analysis and all. Eventually, you agree to the terms, and you might have a customer data cloud or a solution like Gigya where you say, hey, you agree to our terms for browsing this website and all. And again, you got the user's preference stored into your screen. Gordon became your customer, and they procured, and he or she, procured a product. And now you have their invoice, their email address, as well as their credit card number, which might be linked to their home address. Imagine a name. You started with the name and the kind of detail you have for this particular customer of yours, the kind of information you are capturing. From a data privacy perspective, this is all you have to present to the auditing organization, that for any particular customer, I'm keeping all of those details. And if I have to obfuscate this information, if I have to encrypt that information, how can I do that? There are tools that are available in the SAP ecosystem, like BigID, that can aggregate all of that information, give you one holistic report, and then you can remediate whatever you have to do in this whole process. So I covered three areas right now. I covered data volume, I covered data document management, which is the unstructured information, and I covered data privacy. I'm going to pass over now the screen to Feroze to cover data quality, and then we will address the data governance. And that way you have a holistic approach, a full-blown area that Auritas covers from all angles of data strategy. Feroze?
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you very much, and thank you, everybody. And nice to be here with you, talking to you today about a few different components of data strategy. Let me start with a small little story. This happened a few years ago. I was working on a project where we were migrating data for a large oil and gas company, and on one day, a colleague of mine and I, we worked pretty late, and we moved some pricing conditions into one of these servers, and we went back to our hotels, and then next day in the morning we came back to the office, and the whole office was in an uproar, and everybody was looking for us, and they were saying, hey, where were you, what happened to you? And then when we asked, they said that the entire sales and distribution module had stopped functioning. Meaning we checked, and then they told us that they were not able to raise invoices. And currently, and at that point in time, they were doing a user acceptance test, and this data was being used for the user acceptance test. So their entire invoicing process stopped working. And of course, very quickly we fixed that issue because we had put in place a kind of framework that allowed us to do that. I will talk about that a little later. But we fixed the issue. But imagine if this particular issue had happened in a production scenario. This is an oil and gas company. There are transactions which are happening which are worth millions of dollars, and even a stoppage of a few hours can result in a huge loss in a monetary impact. So that is the power of data quality, or that is the impact that data quality can have on your operations. So here I've listed some of these different points, and I think again I'm kind of preaching to the choir. Everybody knows that data quality is very important, but just to reinforce some of those things, we have, when you have data quality issues, it can impact your decision making. Your decisions are only as good as the data that you're using for in creating the decisions and things like that. So now, considering that data quality is so important, how do we build a strategy? What are all the different pieces that we need to keep in mind when we are building a data quality strategy? So one of the key things that you should be looking at, which should drive your data strategy, is you have to get it clean and keep it clean. So it's not only important to have good data quality at the beginning of your data journeys, the different data journeys that we spoke about, but after your data journey is over and then you transformed and you are into business as usual, you still need to keep your data clean. To be able to do this, you also need to identify the goals that your organization is willing to achieve and what is the impact of data quality on these goals. This has to be a part of your data quality strategy. Then you also have to establish metrics. Peter Drucker, the management guru, has said that only what is measured will be managed. So to be able to measure anything, you need to have metrics. And if you want to measure and if you want to manage data quality, you need to have metrics that will allow you to manage your data quality. And we will talk a little bit about the different metrics that are available. And of course, once you have measured your data quality and you have identified where you are, then of course you need to assess. You need to be able to assess the data quality, right, and see how whether what are the metrics that are associated with it. So your data strategy should comprise of some of the processes that are required for assessing the data quality. And finally, it should also have it should detail the activities that you will undertake to improve your data quality metrics. So now, in the next slide, let's take a look at some of the data quality metrics that you can use to measure your data quality. Okay, so one of the metrics which is pretty common and which is used is the metric of accuracy, of data accuracy. So data, what do we mean by data accuracy? So data accuracy basically is ensuring that your data is correct. Okay, so when you have, let's say, some information about a particular product or a particular customer or something, that information which you're storing about that particular entity has to be accurate. And of course, you will have to have various methods of identifying how accurate that particular information is. Then another metric which you should be using is that of completeness. This is a problem which often plagues the different data entities. Let us say if you have, for example, a database which you are going to use for sending out emails to customers, and if in that database you have records for which there are customers, or there are records where you don't have an email address, then that particular record is incomplete. Okay, does not have the required information for the purpose that you have built that particular database, and that is going to impact how you use that information, and which is why completeness is a critical part of your metrics. Okay, then we have another metric called conformity. This is basically to ensure that the different parts of your data set are in conformance and they are aligned with each other. And also, like when you look at the data itself, the data has to conform to certain patterns. Supposing you're trying to search through your database, and the data that is available, like for instance here you can see there is a date format, and if the format is different in different fields, then when you try to search for the date, you will not be able to get the correct information. So conformance is pretty important. Consistency of the database, of the data, of different tables within the data set, that is another important metric which needs to be tracked as well. Then some other metrics like integrity and timeliness, these also have a critical impact on data quality, and these are also some of the things that need to be measured. And finally, we have this metric of uniqueness. Now, uniqueness or as it is commonly known, duplicates. So that is another critical component or a critical metric that you need to measure, because uniqueness, like in terms of let's say your customers, you need to have one unique record for every customer that you have. If you have multiple customers, then the chances of the data being out of sync is high. Also, like let's say for instance, if you're going to send out some mailers to your customers, and each mailer, let's say it costs $1 or $2, and if you have a database of about 100,000 customers, and let's say 30% of them are duplicates, which means that 30,000 of your customers are going to get 2 mailers. The same mailer, they're going to get it twice, and if each mailer costs you $1, then that's $30,000 down the drain. So that is why uniqueness is also one of the more important metrics that you need to keep track of. So moving on, so these are all the different types of metrics. Let me show you some examples of some of the dashboards that you can create to actually measure and manage the data quality in your systems. So here in this slide, you see this is actually from tool called SAP's Information Steward, and here we have put together a dashboard which is specific to the material master. Okay, and it looks at in SAP you have a material master which comprises of multiple views, and here you can see the data quality for the sales view, for the storage location view, as well as the valuation view, and each of these sets of data is evaluated on the different components such as completeness, conformity, and consistency. And you can see here, right away that there are some consistency issues with the, material storage, and which is why, you can focus your efforts on that particular area and try to fix those. Here is another example of the uniqueness rule check, and here you can see that there is a uniqueness score of a particular uniqueness score is given, and basically it identifies that there are many duplicates within this particular material master, and these are some of the issues that you need to be fixing. So when you moving on, the next slide will actually show you an overall kind of a score. See, what these metrics do is they allow you to actually prioritize your work. Let's say the metrics give you a kind of a common platform on which you can measure or identify the data quality of all the different objects and entities within your ERP or your various systems. Let's say you have material master, you have a customer master, you have a vendor master. When you assess the data quality and when you look at the metrics, then you can see if there is a particular entity which has a low score, then immediately you can focus your efforts on that particular entity. Also, so to be able to do that, you have to actually roll up all your different data quality parameters into a single number and then use that number to drive these decisions. So data quality, and all these measurements and all those need to be a part of your data strategy. And moving on, we have seen the data quality component, data volume, privacy components, and then another important component of your journeys, like things like your S4 journey or your mergers and acquisition, is data migration, and that's what we will talk about in the next few slides. So data migration is not, I mean, many of us are familiar, where data migration occurs during new implementation, but there are also other occasions for data migration or for data to be moved from one source system into a target system. So some of the other triggers are like, let's say there's an upgrade, a greenfield upgrade, where you're re-implementing your system, then you have data in your current ERP system, you have to move that across to the new one. Mergers and acquisitions happen, then there are the companies which are acquiring, there is data, there are transactions which are available there which need to be moved to your system so that you are able to manage those organizations. Let's say you have a BW implementation and you need to do an initial load, then you need to actually move your data from your ERP system into the BW. And of course, now this is the age of the cloud, and a lot of all the systems are being moved to the cloud, and so migrations to the cloud are also driven by data migration also needs to address cloud migrations. So data migration is important. So what are the different components of a data strategy for migrations? What are the things that you need to keep in mind? We've just seen data quality, right? Data quality is very important, and the impact on data migrations is also very key. So you have to identify your data quality issues and fix them before migrating the data. So to be able to do that, you need to profile your data, you need to implement your data quality rules, and then cleanse your data as per those data quality rules before migrating them. In terms of what will you migrate across, there are the usual suspects like the customer master, the vendor master, materials master, and all these. So these are some of the things that you will actually migrate. And of course, there are transactions, and typically what you do with the transactions is you don't migrate the transactions, you only migrate the open items. And then there is historical data. Historical data is historical transactions. These can either be moved to data warehouse or left in the source system. And other things that you need to consider are that you need to validate your data before loading, and key thing, because data migrations, like I've mentioned, are repeatable, these can occur at various points in time, it is important to implement a data migration framework. And you remember that little story that I told you about the issue with the pricing conditions, and we were able to fix that issue within a matter of 10 minutes because we had implemented a data migration framework. So what is the kind of data migration framework that you can implement? That is in the next slide. So if you take a look at this slide here, this shows you the heart of the data migration framework is a staging area which is supported by an ETL tool. On the left side, you can see the legacy data environment. There are various different types of sources, files, databases, applications, and all the data is actually being pulled into the staging area. And there the ETL tool is used to cleanse, transform, validate, and load the data. Couple of things which you have to note here is that, see, when we load data into the target system, that load is typically an expensive process. So if we can validate the data before loading it, then we can have a very high load percentage. In fact, using a framework such as this, we can have a load percentage of close to about 90% or 99%. And that is possible because we pull in some of the configuration data from our target environment and use it to validate the data. Certain other components of the framework are reconciliation. Let's say you have in a source certain set of data, and in the target you're loading some data, you need to reconcile the two, you need to let your auditors know. So then the framework should be able to provide those reconciliation reports. Also, data migrations can take a long time, so you need to have a way in which you are able to monitor the process. So as you can see on the top, there are various dashboards and performance analysis which can support this particular aspect. So that covers the data migration part. And a logical thing from data quality and data migration is governance. And I'll invite David to talk about how your data strategy for governance should be.
Thanks, Feroze. So I hope everyone's getting all this. So really, just to summarize, when you think about your data journey, and you think about the transformation efforts, and you think about that single project, what Auritas is trying to communicate and extend is that there's a lot of similar properties. So when you think about data volume management, as Deepak talked about, that's a way of reducing your database when you do that migration. When you think about data quality, and data quality is the theme throughout any ERP and ongoing process data management strategy. Then there's the data migration, which we all know, and any of us that have gone through it. And then there comes so that's the project. Then there becomes the process, which is the governance. And again, the same theme, get it clean to keep it clean. Perform a competent DQA. So now, here's the thing. When you embark on a data strategy project, a data transformation, you may go big bang. You may, as a customer, decide, or an organization decide, that you're going to do your migration and your governance with MDG at the same time. I've seen it. It's complex. It's busy. And it can be done, so you can leverage some of that. On the other hand, what I see most companies and organizations do, which I think is, you know, equally as effective, is to do the migration, because that's the project. And then once you've done the migration, orchestrate and organize a governance organization and a governance strategy. That is a process. That's different. So then we talk about reviewing your analysis, identifying business owners for cleansing activities. In other words, when we talked about data quality earlier, now we're going into governance. You need to make sure that that data quality is good. So what are we going to do? So we're going to build that business case for you. We're good at that. Implementing an SAP MDG methodology. How are we going to get from point A to point B from a process, not a project? In other words, change management, organizing the business, selling it to the business, optimizing your business process through data integrity. That is where you want to finish up. And then we're going to talk about the key success factors. Next. Okay, building a business case. Increased procurement spend, not optimizing inventory levels, increased warehouse management costs, poor lead time accuracy, decrease in production efficiency. These are things that any organization has experienced. Lack information needed to make critical decisions. Business decisions are corrupted by poor data quality. These are all items that we have seen at Auritas that impact the overall business. This costs money. Lack of consolidated view of customer data across all channels, customer hierarchy and grouping, visibility of property and analysis. This is all real business data challenges that cost businesses money that we can help solve. Next. Okay, let's talk about real use cases. Missing material costs, inability to sell. If you don't have a cost in SAP, you can't sell it. Duplicate materials, ineffective procurement strategy, could be global, could be regional. Incorrect or missing dimensions and weights. I've seen this firsthand, where people have crossed state lines, or in Europe, cross country lines, and been fined because the weights and measures are different than the bill of material. Aged materials. What have you got in your warehouse? Space utilization, storage costs. You don't even know what you got. And missing payment terms. That's a direct impact on your revenue. Next. Duplicate materials, inconsistent taxonomy. I'm sure what I'm saying to you guys without reading through a slide is not missed upon anybody. These are real company and real-time situations. Demand planning and forecasting, material data quality issues regarding business procurement, operational planning. That is real-time, real cost to your business. We can help solve those problems, and through a good governance strategy, you can resolve those problems. This helps build your business case. Next. Okay, just to summarize everything, let's talk about the data issue. Equivalent duplicate mill master, inventory optimization, reduction in carrying cost. That's an easy business case to sell. Client is buying the same material from two different prices. That's a spend analysis saving. That's a strategic sourcing issue. Why aren't you buying the same materials from the same vendors and getting optimization around procurement? Next. Well, I can even talk about incomplete attribute fill rate, optimizing your ERP processes, plant maintenance efficiencies. There are so many data issues which have real life impacts on cost. So what's the methodology? This is what we bring to the table. The strategy. Create that roadmap. We talked about that earlier. And that can be the single project, which is your overarching header. And then there's all the small projects underneath that. Don't go into multiple RFPs. If you can source a single vendor, and it doesn't have to be an SI, when we're in the data management space, we can turn around and help you fulfill that journey and leverage all the work we've done before that. Quantify the business value. Align the resources and business sponsorship. This is really important. You need to get the buy-in from the business. What's the design? It's a pure waterfall process. Blueprinting, establishing the data flow, master data analysis, which we think is important, process workflows. How do you do your governance process? Because it's going to be different than a center of excellence. You're going to turn around and understand that here's your business rules and here's your approval process. Validation, approval, and reporting. And reporting is good. The most important piece here is to understand when you hand off the creation, that someone is there to approve it, that it's validated, and then you move forward. And then we have to look at what your business process is to turn around and understand how we glue that together. This is just an overall overarching global workflow that we put together. So when we talk about workflows, they can be simple or they can be complex. This is an example of a global workflow that we put together for a client that had multiple regions where they had a single SAP instance. Implementation, here's the real deal. Execute on the design. So we'll help you with the design. The data model realization, we talked about that. Workflow definition. What is your workflow? How many people are in the line? What regions? What areas of execution? And then there's the user interface mapping to make sure that people are getting what they need. Data distribution scheme and integration, security and authorization setup. Initial data load into the MDG hub. You might have multiple source and target systems when it comes to MDG. That's supported. And then the business involvement during UAT. This is really important because it's during UAT that we do the user training. And because they can be involved in the building of the solution, but at the UAT, they can be validating the solution. Detailed documentation. We will provide you with that documentation either from an HR perspective, a training perspective, what have you, so that you get what you need to move forward without us. We don't want to be living with you forever. You don't want us living with you forever. And all this implementation strategy is key. So let's talk about those keys to success. We've been through a whole journey here. We've been through a data transformation. How do we get you there? DVM, DQ, data migration, data governance. Let's establish measurable goals. Let's align business and IT expectation. Confirm senior management buy-in. We can help you do that. We can give you all those things we talked about. Ensure that the business goals drive functionality. In other words, change some of your business to turn around and leverage good software. Measure and managing its SLAs. Yes, get metrics. Feroze talked about that earlier. Establish metrics to make sure that you're getting what you need, especially around data quality. Commit, train personnel to your organization's data quality issues. That doesn't just go for the data quality, it goes for your governance. Understand the costs of your poor data quality. You can justify it by saying when you're getting fined for incorrect weights and measures, etc. Employ a proven methodology. We can give you that. Use the phased rollout schedule. We'll work with that. It doesn't have to be big bang. We can do it through a migration, and we can do it through a good governed data governance strategy, which would be customer and vendor first, because that's more natural, and then maybe material after that. And then track your return on investment. And as we've always talked about, everything we do is repeatable, whether it be data quality, data migration, data governance, and data archiving. Everything is sustainable and everything is repeatable. That's all I've got, Deepak, so I'll hand the last words off to you. Thanks.
Thank you, David. I'm sure the audience is finding there was a lot of content that we covered today. And also, a lot of information that was shared, because, we are covering a lot of these topics, and I thought what better time to cover this in a holistic manner than this one. And over the coming years, we're gonna address these topics in granular details with follow-on blogs and webinars and mail outs. But for all of you who are attending this webinar, and also, if you're interested in getting the recording, please email Matteo, and he'll be happy to share the details with you. But we are also offering a complementary analysis for the data volume, and even if there is an analysis that you want to review your data quality, we are able to offer that also. But now I'm going to open the platform for any questions, and Matteo, please read up the questions, and we'll try to answer to best of our knowledge. Folks, you have the tab open for questions, where you can type your questions, and we'll try to answer them to best of our knowledge. Or you can send us an email also. Matteo?
Absolutely. So thank you for that session, guys. It was spectacular. So right now we do have two questions. The first question is, can you please tell me more about the logistics of the data quality assessment and what you would need from us to get started?
Feroze, you want to take that?
Yep. Yeah. So for the data quality assessment, it depends upon which object you want to do the data quality assessment for. There are three data quality assessments that we have pre-packaged. One is for the vendor master, the other is for the customer master, and the material master. And if you are an SAP customer, we can advise you on the different tables that you can extract the data from, and then provide it to us as a CSV file, and we can then run it through our implementation and give you the reports. It would take us about maybe 2 weeks for us to do the entire exercise. And during this exercise, we will also interact with you. We will have discussions with you to understand what we are seeing in the data, and then come up with a final report to let you know what is good that we found within your data, and our recommendations for you to improve your data quality.
Thank you for that, Feroze. And absolutely, one thing that we'll also be sending out post-webinar is a quick survey that can help you get started on the data quality assessment, and then we can book a time. The second question from our viewers is, what is your stand on the use of the data migration cockpit?
So the data migration cockpit comes bundled with it's a part and parcel. It has various features that allow you to actually move data into an SAP system. However, when you want to do some amount of data cleansing, evaluation, assessment, then you need to have something similar to the framework that I had mentioned earlier. So the data migration cockpit, it will allow you to load the data, and usually if there are any issues or anything, of course the data will fail, and then you have to look at the logs to identify what the issues are, and then take the data again and then cleanse it. But it does not give you a kind of a platform where you can identify these issues upfront and then fix them before loading them into the system. So if again, it also depends upon the volume of data that you're managing. When you have very large volumes of data, then of course you should have a much more robust framework where to manage the volume of data. But if the volumes of data are smaller, and let's say you already have pretty clean data, then you can definitely go the migration cockpit way.
Thank you for that insight, Feroze. That was really helpful. Now we're wrapping up here on our webinar. If you have any further questions, please feel free to email any of our panelists. And also, if you are looking forward to that data quality assessment, keep an eye out for the post-webinar email we'll be sending that can allow you to get started on that. Thank you, everybody that attended today, and we look forward to speaking to you further.
Thank you for your time.